interesting thing as we're talking about the new technology and the various modes of notification and how we have to spread that out. As we get into the texting and the Twitter and the Web 2.0 type of world, it's also something that we as emergency response people should also take into effect, that that is a vast wealth of information that we can use as well for our first responders and for decision makers. We obviously can't rely on it totally, but I think studies are being done, and I predict they will prove that the vast majority of that information during a time of crisis is probably fairly accurate. Probably 60 to 80 to maybe upwards of 90% of it, and my prediction will be that the students on a campus know what's going on. I think in Virginia Tech it showed that they did, and I think we'll find that as we do further studies on this as well. And that's information that we can use as well to help our first responders get to where they need to be. For those of us in public information and messaging and imaging, information that we can use to help craft a message to the public about what they need to do. And this stuff is instantaneous. Last summer with the earthquake out in Chino Hills, I wish I had the graph here. Within 5 seconds, the first text message came out. That earthquake was not even done, and the first text messaging started hitting the various technological fields that are out there. The first 5 minutes, it took 5 minutes for the Associated Press to put a news alert out on the Chino Hills 5.4 earthquake. As soon as the Associated Press put that message out, 5 minutes afterwards, most of the local television stations here in Los Angeles, and I believe some in San Diego as well, and CNN and Fox, it started hitting their screens. What the information shows is in that 5-minute period, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people knew about the earthquake before the media put out their message. The world of Twitter and texting and email and the like spiked starting at 5 seconds after the first shock, spiked all the way up, and as soon as the mass media got it, the new media plummeted. So it shows the importance of trying to integrate some of these technologies into what we're doing, because in the first 5 minutes, everyone is relying on each other and the new media, not the old traditional media. And it's one of the principles that we're trying to develop as we put together. This is a draft report of the state alert and warning draft document that we gave to the legislature as we try to coordinate an alert and warning system statewide. And some of the principles that are included in this document are fundamental, but I think they need to be said, they need to be reiterated, and we believe in them firmly. The principles of alert and warning must be guided by the SIMS and NIMS systems, because that is what is accepted by most everyone as the proper procedure in an incident. They must also take into account the locals' existent realities and their capabilities and their needs. It's one of my pleasures is to work with the federal Homeland Security folks, not just on public information and communications, but also in some of the systems. I was in Washington a few weeks ago, well, a month or so ago, at the S&T, the Science and Technology Directorate Division, and one of the things, my message to the feds, especially on the science and technology side, where some of these capabilities are being looked at and studied and practiced, is find out what the locals want. Secondly, find out how they're going to pay for it. You know, don't make these great things and don't start going down that path unless there's money to pay for it that you can provide at the local level. But that's one of the principles, is that the locals' needs and existing capabilities must be recognized, and we've built it into this document as it moves through the system as we try to help develop a statewide alert and warning system. And yet it also must be universal enough to handle not only the local capabilities, but also the state and national capabilities, because at the state level we are trying to bring all of this together, the national level as well. So it obviously is a challenge, but those are some of the guiding principles that we are trying to live by as we prepare this state warning system. And again, it also is going to take more than just local participation. It's also going to take more than national and state participation. It's going to take participation from the private sector as well, and that's where we're also moving forward. We're working closely with the folks at Google to incorporate some of this stuff and incorporate them and other private partners into this system as well. So with that, I will just conclude by touting a couple of programs that we offer. I mentioned the Public Officials Initiative. We are partnered with UC San Diego to teach crisis communications to local elected officials at the city level, city council, county boards of supervisors. Tonight we'll be in Dublin teaching, giving this class. It's a 2-hour class to public officials. We've developed it in 2 hours because we understand a lot of city councils and county board of supervisors can't spend more than that above and beyond their the duties they already have. But the first hour kind of goes over SIMS and NIMS, practices and protocols and incident command, because you'd be surprised, even though local officials are supposed to know that stuff, you would be surprised how many people don't. And secondly, the last half hour is or the last hour is more of these crisis communications guidelines to get people to practice these things. Like anything in emergency management, you have training and exercises. If you don't, like my boss, the governor, says, if you don't practice, you don't get perfect. And it's the same thing with communications. There's a reason Rudy Giuliani was given a lot of credit after 9/11. Regardless of politics, regardless of how you feel about other things, he really did do an amazing job, and his staff, with communications after 9/11, because he practiced. Some of the things he said may have sounded off the cuff, and he may have reworded some things in various ways, but they didn't just happen. His team practiced those things time and time again before that incident, that tragic incident, occurred. I think one of the things was someone asked him about the total number of deaths. And obviously it's a fluid situation, you're not going to know, but what he said was something to the effect of the number of deaths are going to be more ultimately than we can bear. That's a compassionate statement which just drew people in and gave him and his team the credibility that was needed at that time. So again, you can go back to your folks and tell that we have the Public Officials Initiative that we will bring to you at no charge, which is good in these budget times for local governments. And the same with, we're working on Public Information Officer and Joint Information Center training as well. A lot of this came through Golden Guardian. We're trying to find a funding mechanism between the new agency with CalEMA and CSTI that we can continue bringing some of this PIO-JIC training to your local public information officers at no cost, and we hope to announce a funding mechanism to do that shortly. So with that, I will turn it back to the moderator.
Wow, what a bunch of information. The academician and the educator in me always comes out at times like this, and as you could see me in the front taking copious notes, shall we say. So I would like to take a brief moment before we get to the questions and answers that I'm sure that you have for our esteemed panelists to briefly run by some of the catchphrases and some of the interesting stuff that I came across, and maybe you find it interesting. It's not going to be on the exam, just to let you know that. So from Art's presentation, I really respect his idea of going back to these best practices and procedures in social science research. In all fairness, technology is technology, and technology has helped us get the word out in terms of notification. However, in many of these crisis situations, as you can imagine, it's not the technology that is getting necessarily tested, it's the people. And when we expect action or non-action from them,